Close your eyes for a second. No alarm, no meeting, no deadline, no manager waiting on your reply, no inbox, no schedule, no place you have to be, just you, awake, and an entire day stretching out in front of you with absolutely nothing you are required to do. How long before the anxiety hits? For most people reading this, the answer is minutes, maybe seconds, because we have been so completely rewired by the modern world that unstructured time doesn't feel like freedom anymore. It feels like a problem to solve, a gap to fill, a failure of productivity. But here is what nobody tells you. That feeling, that crawling discomfort with open time, is not human nature. It is a very recent invention. For 300,000 years, every single morning looked exactly like that. No alarm, no job, no schedule, nowhere to be. And the humans who woke up to that morning were not anxious about it. They were not scrambling to fill the silence. They were not checking anything. They were just alive. And what they did with those days, the real answer, backed by archaeology and anthropology, is so different from what you are living right now that it will make you question everything you have been told about work, time, and what human beings are actually for. Let's start with the number that changes everything. In 1966, anthropologist Marshall Sahlins presented a paper that the academic world was not ready for. Based on field studies of living hunter-gatherer populations, groups whose way of life most closely resembles prehistoric humans, he calculated that the average adult spent between 15 and 20 hours per week on what we would call work. Acquiring food, making tools, maintaining shelter. 15 to 20 hours, you probably work 40, maybe more. And that doesn't include the commute, the mental load you carry home, the emails you answer at 10 p.m., the Sunday dread that starts creeping in around 4 p.m. Sahlins called hunter-gatherers the original affluent society, not because they had more things, because they had more time. The one resource that cannot be manufactured, stored, or bought back once it's gone. And this wasn't one study in one place. Anthropologist Richard Lee found the same pattern among the Jew/hoansi in Botswana, the Hadza in Tanzania, the Martu in Australia, the Ache in Paraguay. Completely different continents, completely different environments, completely different cultures, all converging on the same finding. About half the hours you work, roughly twice the free time. So what did they do with it? This is where it gets interesting, because the answer is not what the movies show you. It is not constant danger. It is not desperate survival. It is not clubs and fire and chaos. The answer is almost embarrassingly ordinary. They talked. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner spent decades recording conversations among the Jew/hoansi. She found that during daylight hours, conversations were practical. Who saw animal tracks where? Which plants were ready? Whether the weather was shifting, the logistics of daily life handled casually without urgency. But the volume of time spent simply talking, not working, not hunting, not gathering, just sitting and talking, was extraordinary by modern standards. Adults spent hours every day in unstructured conversation, not networking, not productive dialogue, just the slow, wandering, deeply human act of being in each other's company and saying things out loud. We have a word for this now. We call it wasted time. They had no such concept. When the food situation was comfortable, when a successful hunt had stocked the camp, when the gathering had been generous, entire days could pass without anything resembling work at all. And on those days, people made things, not because they had to, not for trade or profit or survival, but because making things is what humans do when they have time and their hands are free. In the archaeological record, this impulse is everywhere. The 40,000-year-old flute carved from a vulture bone in Germany. 5 precisely spaced finger holes. Someone understood music deeply enough to engineer an instrument, not for food, not for defense, for the pleasure of sound. The 100,000-year-old shell beads found at Blombos Cave in South Africa. Tiny holes drilled through seashells with stone tools, clearly designed to be strung and worn. The nearest coastline was 20 kilometers away. Someone walked 40 kilometers round trip just to collect shells, then spent hours making them beautiful. The cave paintings at Chauvet in France, 30,000 years old. Horses and lions rendered with shading, with perspective, with movement. Someone lay on their back deep inside a cave by firelight and painted animals on the ceiling, not because it helped them survive, but because they had something to express and the skill to express it. This is not the behavior of of a species locked in desperate survival. This is the behavior of a species with time to spare and an irresistible need to create. Children played, genuinely, freely, without schedule or supervision or organized sport. In hunter-gatherer societies observed by anthropologists, children spend enormous portions of their day in what researchers call self-directed free play. No adult hovering, no structured activity, no educational objective. Just children inventing games, exploring, climbing, failing, trying again at their own pace, for no reason except that it was interesting. Developmental psychologist Peter Gray, who studied play across hunter-gatherer cultures, found something striking. Children in these societies learn almost everything they need to know through play. They observe adults and imitate. They practice skills by doing them in low-stakes contexts. They negotiate, compete, cooperate, and resolve conflict, all within the self-organizing chaos of unsupervised play. No curriculum, no grades, no anxiety about falling behind. And the adults? They let it happen. They were present but not hovering, available but not interfering. Because in a world where time was not scarce, there was no urgency to accelerate childhood into productivity. Sleep was different too. Before artificial light, humans slept in two phases. Historian Roger E. Kirch, after decades of research into pre-industrial sleep patterns, documented that the natural human sleep cycle was not one unbroken 8-hour block. It was two separate phases of roughly 4 hours each, with a waking period of 1 to 2 hours in between. During this middle-of-the-night waking period, people were not anxious. They were not reaching for their phone. They were not cataloging everything they hadn't done. They were reflective, calm. Sometimes they talked quietly. Sometimes they had sex. Sometimes they simply lay in the dark and thought. Kirch found references to this waking period in historical documents across dozens of cultures, described consistently as a time of unusual mental clarity, vivid memory, creative thought. We have medicalized this now. If you wake up at 2 a.m. and can't fall back asleep, we call it insomnia and treat it as a disorder. For most of human history, it was just Tuesday. Social grooming consumed significant time, not the metaphorical kind, the literal kind, sitting close to another person and working through their hair, their skin, attending to their body. Primatologist Robin Dunbar, who studied grooming behavior across primate species, found that humans replaced much of this physical grooming with language. Conversation is our grooming behavior. The long, apparently purposeless talks around the fire serve the same function as the physical grooming of our primate relatives, building and maintaining the bonds that kept the group coherent. In a world without contracts, without legal enforcement, without police to call if someone betrayed your trust, relationships were infrastructure. Time spent strengthening them was not wasted. It was foundational. Every hour of casual conversation was an investment in the network that would feed you when the hunt failed, carry your child when you were injured, sit with you when someone died. Then the sun went down, and this is when something shifted. Wiesner's research found that at night around the fire, the nature of conversation transformed completely. The practical logistics of the day disappeared. In their place came stories, myths about how the world was made, tales of ancestors who did impossible things, explanations for why the sky looks the way it does, why certain animals behave as they do, why people suffer, what happens after death, jokes that made everyone laugh until they hurt, gossip that mapped the social landscape of the group in real time. Wiesner calculated that 81% of nighttime conversation among the Jew hoansi was devoted to this kind of narrative. Stories, myths, speculation, imagination. This is where human culture was born. Not in temples, not in schools, not in any institution. Around fires in the dark with full stomachs and no alarm set for morning, humans told each other who they were and where they came from and what everything meant. The first philosophy, the first theology, the first literature, all of it spoken, not written. All of it alive in the mouths of people who had enough time to think about things that didn't help them survive, and enough imagination to wonder about them anyway. Then, 10,000 years ago, everything changed. Agriculture arrived, and with it, the trap. Once you plant a field, you cannot leave. The field requires you. Planting, weeding, irrigating, protecting from animals and raiders, harvesting, storing. The work is relentless, and it never ends because the field never stops needing attention. And farming worked, in the sense that it fed more people. But the archaeologists who study the transition are unambiguous about the cost. Early farmers were shorter than the hunter-gatherers who came before them. Their bones showed nutritional deficiency. Their spines showed the damage of repetitive labor. Their teeth rotted from grain-heavy diets. They died younger. They worked more and got less. But the population grew, and once enough people existed to only survive by farming, there was no going back. Specialization followed. Some people grew food, others made tools, others provided protection. Eventually, someone had to manage all of this, and managers needed to be paid, and paying required systems, and systems required enforcement, and enforcement required authority. 5,000 years after the first seed was planted, someone invented the job, and the alarm clock was only a matter of time. Here is what the numbers actually look like across human history. For 290,000 of the 300,000 years that modern humans have existed, the average adult worked 15 to 20 hours a week, made things for pleasure, talked for hours without purpose, slept in 2 phases with a quiet middle hour for thinking, played without productivity, let children be children without curriculum, sat around fires at night and told stories about everything that mattered. For the last 10,000 years, we have been unwinding all of that, slowly at first, then faster and faster, until we arrived here. At the world where unstructured time feels like anxiety, where doing nothing feels like failure, where a day without output feels like a day wasted. You are not lazy for wanting rest. You are not broken for craving unstructured time. You are not failing when you sit and do nothing useful and feel somewhere underneath the guilt that this is somehow right. You are a 300,000-year-old animal living in a 200-year-old system. And some part of you, the oldest part, still remembers what mornings used to feel like.